This video will talk about how ForeScout solution and Palo Alto Networks Next-Gen Firewall work together to address the need of dynamic network segmentation. ForeScout extended module for Palo Alto Networks Next-Gen Firewall is developed and supported by ForeScout. First of all, ForeScout Counteract provides device visibility, classification, and real-time user and device contextual information without requiring any agents. So what are the joint solution benefits? Well, ForeScout extends the Palo Alto Next-Gen Firewall solution by sharing real-time user identity to IP mapping, by profiling, classifying, and dynamically tagging devices, including IoT devices, and lastly, by exchanging real-time device context and security posture with Next-Gen Firewall. Overall, this solution will allow you to dynamically segment network resources, provide secure access regardless of location, and enforce identity and context-aware security policies, thereby reducing your attack surface and improving network defenses and responses. So let's see how the solution works at a high level, and then we will talk about two very specific use cases that we'll see in the demo. So when the device connects to the network, whether it be wireless, wired, or VPN, ForeScout Counteract will discover, classify the devices immediately. The ForeScout extended module for Next-Gen Firewall will pass one or more of the following properties like user identity, host information, and tags to Next-Gen Firewall. The Next-Gen Firewall will leverage this information from ForeScout to enforce security policies and network access. Alright, so now the first use case is network segmentation based on user identity and device compliance. User Hitesh connects to the network, and ForeScout Counteract determines the user identity, device classification, ownership, and compliance. Since the user is authorized and device is compliant, Counteract sends a predefined Allow Finance tag to Next-Gen Firewall. In this example, we're checking for antivirus compliance. Next-Gen Firewall leverages the received tags within a predefined firewall rule to provide secure access to user Hitesh. And in this example, Next-Gen Firewall provides access to internet, finance, and HR resources. Next, user MSHA connects to the network. ForeScout Counteract determines the user is authorized, but the device is non-compliant. So Counteract sends a predefined Deny Finance tag to Next-Gen Firewall, which will limit network access to internet only. Alright? Now, the next use case is network segmentation based on IoT classification and ownership. When different IoT devices connect to the network, ForeScout Counteract discovers and classifies the devices. ForeScout further clarifies the IoT devices based on ownership, such as corporate devices and unknown devices. In this example, when ForeScout detects corporate security cameras on Network Connect, ForeScout sends a predefined tag, Corp Camera, to Next-Gen Firewall. Next-Gen Firewall leverages the received tags within a predefined firewall rule to provide secure access to corporate security cameras. In this example, Next-Gen Firewall provides access to their functional needs only, such as DVI recorder. Next, ForeScout detects unknown security cameras instant they connect to the network. ForeScout sends a predefined unknown camera tag to Next-Gen Firewall, and based on the firewall rules for this tag, access to DVR recorder, internet, or internal resources is denied. Alright, so let's jump to the demo now. This is Counteract's single pane of glass management console that provides full visibility and control to your device landscape just by a few clicks. Since our demo is focused on using tags to provide dynamic segmentation, let's go to Palo Alto Networks Next-Gen Firewall to understand these predefined tags and how they're used in firewall rules. On Next-Gen Firewall, tags are defined within address groups. So for example, Allow Finance tag is mapped to CT1 address group, and Palo Alto Next-Gen Firewall uses these address groups in the firewall rules. This part is very important. I want you to remember that the tags sent by Counteract will map to some dynamic address groups on Next-Gen Firewall, and Next-Gen Firewall uses these predefined dynamic address groups within firewall policies to allow or deny access to resources. Alright, so let's go to the Policy tab. As you can see, we've defined a rule which allows devices belonging to address group CT1 to reach the finance server, which means devices that are tagged as Allow Finance by Counteract will be allowed access to finance server. All right. So now let's see this in action. I'm going to use a policy which is widely used by customers because ForeScout does not require agents to check device compliance. This policy is going to check AV compliance on corporate devices belonging to users from finance group. In this simple example, devices with AV installed and running are considered compliant. And for such compliant devices, Counteract will automatically send an Allow Finance tag to PAN Next-Gen Firewall. And as we saw earlier, the Allow Finance tag maps to CT1 address group. So if I go and look at the details of this group, you can see that the IP address of that compliant endpoint has been added to this group. And according to the firewall rule, devices that belong to CT1 address group will have access to the finance server. All right. So if I go remote desktop to this computer with username Hitesh and ping the finance server, I am successfully able to reach the finance server. I'm also able to reach the internet. All right. Okay, so now for the corporate endpoints from finance group with antivirus not running, we're going to send a deny finance tag to Next-Gen Firewall. And since the deny finance tag maps to CT2 address group, based on this firewall rule, such non-compliant devices will be denied access to the finance server. So if I log into this corporate computer with username msha and antivirus is disabled, user is unable to ping the finance server based on the deny finance tag sent by Counteract to Next-Gen Firewall. Alright, the user is still able to reach the internet, just the access to the finance server has been disabled based on the tag sent by Counteract to Next-Gen Firewall. Okay, so we saw tagging based use case. But what if customers already have firewall rules based on HIP data? You can also leverage Counteract to send HIP data to Next-Gen Firewall without installing any endpoint agents. Palo Alto Next-Gen Firewall will leverage this data to apply rules based on HIP profile. Alright. So now let's talk about our second use case, segmentation based on IoT classification and ownership. We're going to use the same tagging techniques for IoT segmentation. When devices connect to the network, ForeScout discovers them immediately and classifies them into device types. As you can see in our classification policy, ForeScout has classified devices into mobile devices, Windows, IP camera, printers, LEDs, HVAC systems, and many more. So once you have classified them into device types, what you want to know next is who owns these devices. So you'll further clarify these devices into ownership, such as corporate devices and unknown devices. So let's take an example of security cameras. Based on the configured policy and fingerprints, ForeScout will clarify security cameras into corporate cameras and unknown cameras. And just so you know, classification and clarification happens as soon as ForeScout discovers the devices when they're attempting to connect to the network. So in this example, for all your corporate cameras, you want them to communicate with the DVR server. So we send a corp camera tag to Next-Gen Firewall. And similar to the first use case, Next-Gen Firewall will map this tag to a dynamic address group CT3 in this example, which will be used within a firewall rule to allow access to the DVR server. Alright? Now for all the unknown cameras, you want to ensure they don't communicate with the DVR camera. So you will send a non-corp tag to Next-Gen Firewall to deny access to the DVR server. You can also combine other actions in the same policy, such as switch block, change VLANs, send an email to administrator, etc., to ensure the unknown devices on the network have no access to corporate resources. Alright? You can build similar policies for other IoTs on your network and send a tag or HIP attributes to Next-Gen Firewall to provide dynamic network segmentation. This concludes the demonstration. Thank you.